Hi, welcome to our soil science podcast. My name is Ahmad. I'm your first host. To my left, I have our guest, Grant Caputo.
Hi.
He's our expert.
I'm Sam Kimmel.
I'm Kat Shaw. I'm Lindsay Thomas.
I'm Danny Nisbet.
I'm Leda Jean.
All right, so to get started, first we're going to cover what coral reefs are. So if our expert Grant wants to just break down what a coral reef is, just give us like a proper explanation.
So coral reefs are kind of like animals.
Mm.
They start off as little polyps and then they connect together and form this like nice little ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And they serve as a hub for biodiversity like all over the ocean and are also a large source of the oxygen that we get.
So when you say animals, does that mean like are they very similar to more land-based animals that we'd be familiar with, like, or are they more of like what distinguishes them from like a plant in the ocean?
Well, they are actual animals because they produce abiotically. But looking at them firsthand, you wouldn't think they are. They just look like a rock.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty much what distinguishes them from being a plant.
For all of our viewers, could you tell them what abiotically means?
Meaning that they just produce like off of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They form little polyps that break off, so they don't need a mate.
And you noted that they're like a large producer of the oxygen in
Yeah.
our world, so I guess that would make them pretty important.
Yeah, they filter a lot of carbon. They're kind of like, people allude to them as rainforests of the ocean. So getting rid of them is like getting rid of the Amazon.
So lots of biodiversity as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So,
what kind of species would you find in a coral reef?
Find so many fish, so many plants. Like, first thing people think of when they think of coral reefs are like the Great Barrier Reef. There's sharks all over the place. You know, it's just looking at them like before they get like severely damaged. It's just this very colorful hub for biodiversity.
Yeah, and I know a lot of species are like undergoing extinction, and so
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess coral reefs are definitely like a big factor in helping keep species, diverse in the ocean and all that.
Yeah, they give a habitat for many forms of wildlife. So the fact that they're under threat means that the entire ocean is.
Yeah.
And doesn't that kind of put us under threat too for relying
Definitely.
on like fish for food and stuff?
Yep.
So, just as like a little game, why don't we all go in a circle so we can all contribute? Why don't we all go in a circle and say how coral reefs dying would negatively impact our world, right? So I personally think that if coral reefs die, it's like a sign of global warming, which is like going to have major negative implications. Can you think of any reasons why?
I think it impacts tourism a lot. Like if a lot of people travel out to the Great Barrier Reef or other places on the planet to like go see these things, and if they're dead, people aren't gonna want to do that anymore.
Would you want to speak on your like personal experience growing up in a place that like benefits from a lot of tourism?
Yeah, so back home it's a small little island in the Caribbean. I'm from St. Martin. The only industry is tourism. Like we don't produce anything. It's impossible to grow stuff there really. So we don't export anything. We just rely on people coming in and doing stuff like scuba diving or drinking on the beach, stuff like that. And so I grew up like scuba diving, and I reached my like advanced and rescue diving stuff. So I used to dive quite a bit, and it's interesting to see how like the wildlife has changed from when I started versus how it is now. It's kind of sad.
Did it get less diverse?
Definitely. A lot of like old dive sites are just kind of there now, and
Type
you can
fish.
see how coral bleaching happens.
Can you explain coral bleaching?
Yeah, so the ocean temperatures are getting very hot, and it kind of throws everything out of whack, and there's usually equilibrium, and so there's these little like kind of helper organisms that help coral reefs grow, and the water temperature being thrown off kind of kills them because they can't survive, and so it ends up lacking nutrients, and they call it coral bleaching because like oftentimes you'll see the coral reef actually turning white, but bleaching can also occur just by a coral reef dying and kind of just looks like a bare rock with not a lot of wildlife around it.
In our white paper, we talked about how the excess carbon dioxide dissolves in the seawater, which weakens the coral skeletons.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know we've been seeing some statistics recently, like more than 80% of the world's reefs just being hit by bleaching in this year, which insane number. I mean, I think I'm trying to continue the game that we've been doing in the circle. Getting back to that, I think just fish populations. I mean, so much of the global population relies on fish as their main source of protein. I mean, especially probably island communities that like depend more on fishing. Than,
yeah, we eat a lot of
yeah,
fish, man.
Yeah, and I just think, I mean, so many people are hungry in the world, and this just is exacerbating that problem.
Yeah, it's a big issue too.
Yeah, I think that also goes back to like the economic loss, like not only with the tourism,
Yeah.
but like I'm sure a lot of like the businesses down there like relies on like fish and like kind of like producing that. So that would also like have a really big negative impact.
For sure.
It's just an example of like natural capital, you know. There's all these natural ecosystem services the world's providing to us, like being able to provide sources of food, providing clean air, providing pollination. And when these things start to disappear, like during climate change, I mean, that economic loss, like the economic value that we don't typically see, like we can't put a value to pollination, but when we start to lose it, we can really see the damage of that. And I think we're seeing that with coral reefs for sure.
It's one of those things that you can directly kind of witness because it's, you know, like when you see a whole reef die off,
Yeah.
like you see all the organisms that are around it kind of just disappear.
Yeah.
And so it's also kind of just depressing to look at.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe it's not always as visible for many people. I mean, it's harder to get, like, if a forest gets burned down, there's just an empty clearing. A lot more people are going to see that than being able to directly see a coral reef. You have to go scuba dive for that, or it's a lot farther away from the majority of people in the world, you know?
For sure.
So it's definitely like,
I think like if you're in the middle of Wisconsin,
Yeah.
you're not gonna like care about the coral reefs as much.
Yeah.
But I think there are like extending impacts from the loss of them that would affect someone who is like who thinks it might not. You know, like if a lot of these coral reefs die, like the price of exports for fish could go up a lot because of scarcity, stuff like that. And so like it's very selfish to say that it doesn't affect you and that like who cares, you know.
yeah.
It's also just a big thing is like awareness. Like when you see a rainforest getting cut down, like you can probably intuitively think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But many people just don't know what coral reefs are. Like I didn't even know it was an animal until I did like a research paper on it.
I mean,
And I didn't know that it was like so important until like you dig into it because you just like you said
Yeah.
you don't see it. So
Well, I know a lot of the species that live in coral reefs actually produce chemicals which are used in medicines and pharmaceuticals.
yeah,
so
that's a big part of it too.
there will be a lot less of that too, which, you know, of course, is going to be pretty terrible.
Yeah.
So,
All around negative impact if we let them die. So I think there's a lot of efforts in place like trying to bring them back to life, like coral farming, like cold water injections and stuff like that, or like creating synthetic coral in a lab. But even stuff like that can throw it off balance too. Kind of just have to let it naturally heal itself.
What are some of those solutions that are being implemented near where you grew up?
Coral like farming.
Coral farm.
Actually, like for dive sites, you might think it's a bad thing, but they'll just like sink a ship or a plane or something, and like you might think it's like littering,
Yeah.
but it actually kind of serves as like its own structure for coral to like grow in rather than just bare sand. So that's one thing that's pretty cool.
how many
They-
boats have you seen?
Not something.
Yeah, exactly. Not
But
yet.
it's like you obviously can't do that too much, but it helps a bit. But in that research paper I did, like they started doing cold water injections in like certain parts of the Great Barrier Reef.
what is that?
They kind of just like pump cold water around the coral reef to try to reduce the temperature. But even that kind of throws things off balance, and since like the ocean is so vast, like it doesn't help that much.
Yeah, and I can imagine, I mean, some of the fish in there must be starting to get used to the warmer
Yeah,
temperatures. and
while other things are
adapt to it. And
adapting,
cold
like,
water, just
It kind of shocks it.
throwing it all off balance, yeah.
Yeah.
We saw in our research that certain coral colonies, like the ones at the Solomon Islands, show heat tolerance. Do you think that's a trend that'll continue with coral reefs? Like, I know it's just like a very isolated case.
Potentially. I mean, things like evolve to adapt, but it's about how fast it can do that.
Mm.
I think like the rate at which the oceans are heating up I think many will die off before they get the chance to. So
I feel like there's such negative talk on a beautiful day. Let's talk about like what we can do as people. You know,
Yeah.
how can we be better? How can we solve this issue? One thing that we saw in our research paper was like fossil fuels obviously are such a big contribution to this, and it's very difficult to like cut out fossil fuels from your life. So I don't know if we have like any ideas of smaller things we can do to basically prevent global warming, which is like the main issue. Would you agree in that? Like global warming is the root issue.
Definitely.
So like why don't we brainstorm some ideas as a group?
I think the best way to start is just spread awareness. Maybe host little like
Podcast.
workshops or podcasts. Hopefully this blows up and many people learn more about coral reefs. But I think, like I was saying before, like just knowing about it makes a big difference. It makes you more self-conscious of what's going on and what you do as an individual.
Yeah, it's very easy to fall into the mindset of like the tragedy of the cons. Like we discussed that in class a few weeks ago, where like if a lot of people just say, oh well, the other people aren't gonna do this hard work to solve a problem. If other people are gonna continue like taking more resources from the earth, I might as well take them too. You know, it may seem like you're just a drop in the bucket individually, but if every person in the world decides to become that drop in the bucket, it fills up pretty quickly.
It's such like a core.
It's motivational.
Such a core issue, you know. It applies to everything. Like they teach that in economics and like personal finance and all that. Like you always like need to make sure that like you only take what you need. You know, like it's like humans are like instinctively greedy, but I think we need to be more mature about things and like look past ourselves, or else it's just very selfish.
Definitely.
Shellfish. Yeah. So yeah, what are some potential solutions that you might have?
I think we can just don't touch the coral when we diving.
Yeah, for sure. Because what does that do?
Kills it. They're super sensitive.
Now you know. Don't touch coral reefs.
Is it just like instant death?
No, it's like over time it contributes to
So you just
bleaching.
go like, boop, and then.
I'm sure.
It's just
Slow and prolonged death.
Do you know
I'm
why
sure
it
that's
does that?
fine. No, I think it just throws it off.
But if
like
a
balance.
fish touches it, would it be fine?
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean,
us.
I'm sure they're like
Why is it us?
symbiotic. It's just we throw it
Yeah, that's the
off.
problem.
A big thing is like sunscreen as well.
Oh,
Like people
yeah.
use like I forgot what the chemical's called. but, like,
SPF.
the propellant.
Zinc.
It is zinc. There's like some kind of propellant that is used in like spray sunscreen that like messes it up.
Like aerosol
Yeah, something like that.
type fish.
I think going back to that fish thing, I think it's just disruption of like natural environment. You know, like they've been
Yeah.
evolving to get used to this for so long, and humans have only recently like
Been able
started to
yeah,
interact
exactly.
with coral reefs without like being drowning at the bottom of an ocean.
Yeah.
So
Well, it says they're one of the oldest living communities from like 200 to 450 million years ago.
wow.
They're super old.
Very old.
Dude, that is old. That is really old. Anyways, so let's wrap this up. Closing thoughts. I think as a group of people, we should all be less selfish and focus our efforts onto just being better people for the environment, because it takes care of us. You know?
For sure.
Uh-huh.
I agree.
I also
Agreed.
just think like be more mindful of your actions and try to be less destructive to the environment.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to like a reef or something, you know, just make sure to be mindful when you're exploring the area. You know, don't touch the coral.
And don't take shells from the beach.
Yeah.
Wait, what's wrong with taking shells from the
I
beach?
don't know. People are really stingy about that.
Sir,
Do you know why? People.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm calling
I
cap
know
on
it.
that. I'm calling
They
cap
got-
No,
on
I'm being
that.
serious.
The shells?
No, they do say not to take stuff because like it's naturally there. Just leave it.
Yeah. I mean, this definitely is a depressing issue, but there certainly is hope there. And I mean, as he was saying, like individually, we all have a duty really to be working towards